Knicks and Bruises, we are back. Shout out to the chat. Yo, Black is time. I got my guy, Jeff Clafter. You already know. Happily Ever Clafter. .wordpress.com. Go check it out. Daily blog every single day. Um, Jeff, appreciate you for joining me. First and foremost. How are you? The season's over. You know what I
Sad,
mean?
but sad, but I'm coping. But thank you for the invite. It's always a special pleasure to be here. To go from fan of the show to on the show is quite an honor indeed, and that's not one that I take lightly. So I
Well,
appreciate you very much, sir.
I appreciate you just being here and every time you say it, you know what I mean, I get a little chill because it feels weird. You know what I mean? But the fact that you do check in and tune in and the fact that you jump on when you can, I appreciate it daily. There's a lot to talk about. You know what I mean? A lot of rumors going around already. But I feel like we would be doing this team a disservice if we don't, number one, just talk about our appreciation of the season. You know what I mean? The run we had. You know what I mean? Some people consider it a disappointment. Some people don't. Some people consider it a successful season. I'm one of those people that say yes, this is a successful season. Even though expectations change throughout the season. But I just want to take a step back, you know what I mean, and talk about the beginning of the off season into the year and what this team has accomplished and how you feeling about that. Before we jump into all the trade rumors and fire this guy and trade this guy and everything else that
We
has been
have all summer to talk
circulated.
about those
Yeah,
things.
it's a long run. Let's champion this ride we just went on. You know what I mean?
Well, I think perspective is important, and I think there are a lot of Knick fans who are smarter than I am who said that this was a Eastern Conference Finals or bust season for the team. Well, let's not lose sight of the fact that we made the Eastern Conference Finals and we're 6 wins away from a championship. I think that's what makes it sting a little bit more is that you were that close and you let a couple of things slip away, but this was a team that kind of was put together on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
And no disrespect meant to Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo, both excellent players, but this team needed a five. And I don't know that they win 50 games and get as the third seed if Randle and Dante are still here, because Mitchell Robinson was out most of the year. Who is manning the middle for this team without them? Hartenstein wasn't here either. And
Mm-hmm.
so shout out to Karl Anthony Towns, who, had been playing the four in Minnesota, came back and filled in at the five. Does he have his weak points defensively? Absolutely. But really, to me, solidified his role as a second star in this city. And really, to me, and I don't mean this as a disrespect to Randle, who is a terrific Knick in his own right, and I don't want to make this a comparison, because I think they're both great, and we don't need to go into the conversation.
We before you finish your statement, I think we're gonna touch on it anyway. You know what I mean? Because when I say I want to go back and kind of dissect this whole thing. You know what I mean? So even pre-trade for Karl Anthony Towns, you know what I mean? We went out and gave up the farm for Mikal Bridges. And let me be on record as saying I think I was the first and one of the few people who, prior to the trade for him, was saying give up the farm, whatever it takes, go get that guy, right? I thought he was the perfect fit, the perfect complement to this team. Now there's a caveat to that, and shout out to Sim. We was talking about it earlier, and that was the team we had with Julius Randle, with Dante DiVincenzo. So that was my vision and my where I was coming from when I was saying, give up those pieces. So when we initially did that move, what was your thoughts? How was you feeling? And
Well,
Mongoose, slow down, man. We gonna get into everything, man. I know you upset right now. You know what I mean? We
and you
gonna
have
bring it.
every right to be upset. There's
We
nothing
gonna
wrong.
bring it down, baby.
We're all upset, so that's fine. Um, you know, I I was not crazy about the Mikal Bridges trade, and and my reasoning behind it. I know we didn't really give up any players of note, but I felt like uh, we gave draft pick compensation for a player who's not an all star. And like it was a heavy price. I get Brooklyn Nets tax and all that stuff, but I kind of feel like, and there's still the window is still open. If you make a trade like that, you've got to win a championship, or you've really hurt your future significantly by giving up all those assets. So, from that perspective, I thought that it would make the team better now, but I question the wisdom if Bridges was that guy. Like, do you give up that haul for him as opposed to somebody else like a Giannis or a insert name of big star here? Mikal's not on that level, and we put together a package, not player wise, but pick wise, for a player who's a glorified role player when he's at his peak, and that's a dangerous thing. We won't, like every trade, you don't know how it will work out until years down the road and what those picks become and all of that stuff. And but there's also opportunity cost involved. It was kind of felt like an all-in move there to get Bridges, and then you see at times, I love Bridges' defense at times, and then at others he lacks the physicality that I really want from a player in his position. It's tough because he's not a overly physical player. He kind of shies away from contact. He's really streaky with his jump shot, and all of those things drive you crazy. But there are moments, and not just a couple, but there are several moments where you looked and you said, "Man, forget about those picks. This guy is legit." And so from that perspective, like, I think that the jury has to still be out on it. I don't think we can convict him after year one. But one thing I like is he's an Iron Man. He doesn't miss games. And when you're trying to push for a championship, that's a great asset to have someone so available. I wish that his production on the court was as consistent as his appearance on the court, right? It's kind of like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde with him. One night he'll have 5 points and you're like, who is this guy? And then what did he drop? 40 something on the Spurs on Christmas Day. And you're like, oh, superstar Bridges is here. Hello, Mikal. Stay for a while, and it's hard because really he's figuring out his role, and that's what this whole season was about. And when you go from a primary initiator in Brooklyn, which is what he was for the year and a half that he was there, and that second half, the first half of that season after the trade he was outstanding in that role. And then the league kind of caught up with him a little bit when the talent wasn't there, and then he struggled in that role in Brooklyn. But now it's like, is he the third option? Is he the fourth option? Is he, it's time should be the second? Where does he fit? And I don't think he ever answered that question.
Man, it's a lot to first off, let me shout out Jason Benjamin. Appreciate the super chat. My guys are back. Salute. Tough loss, but hell of a ride. And I agree. Tough losses. You know what I mean? We're gonna get to those, but I want to talk about the ride because it seems like everybody is ignoring that part. You know what I mean? So I just want to say, you know what? Let's talk about the ride first. Appreciate you with the super chat. You covered a lot, so let's dissect it. Let me start by saying, when I said give up the farm for Bridges, I meant like pay the tax. You know what I mean, of doing business. I didn't know it was going to be that hefty, but even even with that being said, I thought his fit with the team that we had at that time would have been perfectly suited. Um, I'm still not mad at the trade at all. I think the jury's still out. Like you can't make a definitive decision. Like you just mentioned. Um, you got there's still time for us to, like you said, is he the second option, third option, fourth option? I mean, not for nothing. That is an indictment on him, but not just an indictment on him because is Towns the second option, third option, fourth option? Is OG the second option? Like, so when you have that question mark, I don't think it's answered in any specific order for anybody. So, you know what I mean? This goes back to what I've been saying. Enjoy the ride. This is year one. There's a lot of things that we're gonna learn on this ride, and then moving forward, there's a lot of things we got to figure out. Um, but yeah, the only thing I disagreed with that you said is when you said who Bridges is at best, because I don't know if we've seen him at best this year, and I don't even know if this year would be considered his best year of his career. So that you know what I mean. But I do believe that he will get better. A big part of that is his role being defined, and that pecking order being defined. Um, right after that, you know what I mean. We traded for Cat. We're gonna talk about that real quick. I did want to shout out Wonder Woman in the chat. She said she was on vacation the last two games. Um, you know what?
Wonder Woman, don't go on vacation next year. We needed you in the States.
I mean, not for nothing. She might have, just like the Queen. Shout out to the Queen. She might have made a good decision because I was saying, hey, I wish I had a weekend off. You know what I mean? After that loss to kind of decompose, but you know what I mean. This is why I do this to decompose and you know what I mean, like take my mind off it or talk about it, relax and get it out the way. But shout out to you, Wonder Woman. Shout out to the chat.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we made that Cat trade. Let me say a couple of things before we talk about that. Prior to the Cat trade, I was on record of not being a necessary fan of that trade, but believing that that was the gateway for us, and that was the trade that we were going to make. Um, I did believe he was an upgrade as in talent over Randall, and then the fact that his size, you know what I mean, like that's something you can't teach as well. Um, but my preference was not to do it, but I did say I believe that was the direction we were going. That being said, the reasoning, I thought Cat would be a better gateway to the next trade than Randall would be, and that was whoever we were going to be talking about. It would be a more likely scenario that Cat could be moved for insert player X, Y, or Z than Randall would be. So that was my reasoning in kind of justifying. I think this is the direction they're going to go. When they did it, once he's here, I'm rooting for my players. And I got to be honest, Cat surprised me. He was better than my initial thoughts of him were. He was tougher than my initial thoughts of him were. Does he have his moments and his issues? Absolutely. But you know what I mean? In the moment, I did think it was an upgrade. I did think it was a better gateway trade. And once I seen him as a Knick and performing throughout the year, there was no doubt in my mind that he's way better than I thought he was. Way tougher than I thought he was. What was your thoughts on the Cat trade initially, and then how did it change throughout the year with him?
Well, first of all, well spoken. I'm going to have trouble following that up, I think. But yeah, Towns is I didn't watch much Minnesota. Towns was a player that when it looked like we were going to draft him first overall back in the day in the Kristaps draft, he was like my favorite prospect. I loved the idea of Towns, and I didn't realize because from afar I don't think you see it. It's just numbers on a page. What a lethal scorer this man actually is. Like 50, 40, 80 doesn't really do it justice. And he was doing it in the playoffs with a hurt hand. You know, that I hope he gets his thumb surgery as soon as possible so the recovery can come and get by camp. It's completely healed and ready to go. Because when he's 100%, he is one of the deadliest weapons in the game at the 5 spot. And he really changes the game for us. I think in terms of box plus minus, which is not a be all end all statistic, I understand, but I think he was the only Knick in the postseason who was a plus. So, or at least maybe that was the Indiana series that was a plus. And so he was +7 in the series. So obviously good things happen when he's on the court. His levels of versatility are outstanding. He has definite flaws in his game, and you definitely have to game plan around those flaws, and that can make things challenging. But as far as I don't know, he just seems like a good guy. He's easy to root for. He's the big bodega. He's everything that's good about New York. He's a hometown kid. He's here. I honestly fell in love with Towns when he got here. I've heard the rumors. I don't my heart says make it work between he and Brunson. My head's like I'm not sure that's possible, but I kind of want to see it play out just because
we go
players.
We're gonna break that down as well. But I'm 100% with you in that sentiment. The last statement for sure. Um, I skipped OG, signed a big contract, biggest Knicks contract signed ever in the history. Thoughts on the contract and OG's play this year?
Well, Anunoby is probably unique in the NBA. I don't think there's anybody who defends quite like he does. And I don't know that there's anybody who has his skill set, for lack of a better word, that's not really the word I'm looking for, on offense. Like he's typically a good corner 3-point shooter, although he was bad in the playoffs. He drives with ferocity. It could finish at the rim with amazing dunks. He's incredible in transition, but he's one of those players, if he dribbles the ball more than 3 times, your heart goes up into your throat because you're expecting it to be a turnover, right? And so, there's this a lot like Bridges. There's this up and down, inconsistent quality about OG, but when he's locked in and that defense is at its finest, he has shown his impact on that end of the floor for certain. And I think he struggles with some of the same things Bridges does. He doesn't really know his role a lot of times on the offensive end. And so, we have, and it's hard because it's year one together. It's not like these things just, automatically lay themselves out. Like it's not like this magic being comes down and says, this is going to be your spot and your spot. You kind of have to figure those things out. And, those growing pains aren't always pretty. And we saw that, I think, in the Eastern Conference Finals as well. We were trying to figure out who we were and what our roles were. The Pacers knew exactly what their roles were and played them to perfection, even in their losses. And so, I think that gave them a definite advantage that, I don't know if it's a case where time heals all wounds and that they're going to figure it out, or if it's something that there's not, it's like a Rubik's Cube with a sticker missing, right? There's no, there's not really any solution that's going to be satisfying. I don't know which is the case, but, I definitely feel like OG and McCall are definitely suffering from some of the same identity crisis things and I think that hurt us when it came down to crunch time.
Remind me to go back to that because that's huge. Identity crisis syndrome, we'll call it, for lack of a better term, and just so maybe I remember. Shout out to Jason Benjamin. Appreciate the super chat. I think fans are too tough on Macau and Cat. Without those two, we don't make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. Let's give these two an off season together to define roles. I I agree. I agree that fans are too hard on them. I think, but I also think the expectation is warranted, right? Like that. Now, to no fault of Macau, he didn't say you got to give up 5 picks to move to get me. You know what I mean? He was just moved as an innocent bystander, and so that's the package has nothing to do with him. But that doesn't take away the expectation that comes with with who you was moved for. You know what I mean? There was expectation when you was moved, when you was the headliner in the KD trade, right? That expectation comes with that. Whether you know what I mean, you didn't ask to be in that trade either, but you became the number one option. It became a bigger role, became more responsibility. So I think all that is fair. Me myself, I've said it from the beginning. It's gonna take time. I definitely thought throughout the course of the year, a pecking order would be found out. Unfortunately, I can't say that was the case. I think that has to do with Tibbs, but we'll talk about that when we get to when we get to Tibbs. As far as OG, same thing. Responsibility, expectation. When you sign the largest contract from a Knicks signee ever, comes with expectations. Especially when I thought, especially the way our front office moves, we would get you at some type of a discount. You know what I mean? I thought we would get some type of a but you used all the leverage that you had, which you had a lot, and you got the deal done. My biggest concern was you better stay healthy, and he did. So I can't really complain because I think he had a great season. I think there's a lot of room for growth for him as well. I think he grew this year as well. We saw a lot more of him attacking the basket with that ferocity that was again, it wasn't as frequent as I would like, but it was more frequent than it's ever been. So kudos to that. I thought he had a great shooting year prior to getting to the playoffs, and I think again the upside is there. So I like the moves that we made overall. I don't know if we could quickly touch on the campaigns, you know what I mean, the back end rotational moves that we did. And then we'll get into the rumors and everything else.
Well, I was really high on Payne. I liked what he did in the regular season, and then he had a really good game 1 against Detroit. And then, I don't know if someone stuffed him in a suitcase the rest of the playoffs or what, because we didn't see that player again, in the playoffs. That was crazy to me. In fact, it's one of my biggest disappointments in the playoffs because I really feel like an extra ball handler, who's a threat from 3 and can play a little bit of defense is exactly what this group needed. And that he was, he provided that at certain points during the season. He did not provide that after game 1 in the playoffs. But then Landry Shamet came along, and here's a guy who the Knicks obviously believed in. I mean, he separated his shoulder in training camp. the Knicks waited for him, and it didn't look like it was going to pay dividends at all. And then Shamet and Wright were key rotation pieces in the most important series in the last quarter century. So I think that we probably need to upgrade those guys if possible, if we're going to move further. I think, honestly, I do think that they were, in spite of their good play and their good moments, I think that not having better options to go to hurt us. And again, it goes back a lot to reliability. What version of campaign are you going to get? What version of Landry Shamet are you going to get? And that's role players. I understand that, but and sometimes it's just a matter of your role players get hot at the right time. I mean, if you had Thomas Bryant going 3 for 3 from 3 in the biggest game of his life on your bingo card for Indiana, you won a lot of money, but nobody else expected that, right? Sometimes it's the unexpected guys who come through, and the bench guys were fine. Like, to me, you get what you get from your bench, but it's your stars who have to come through the most when the games are on the line. And I felt like in those last 2 games, our top 6 players didn't really show in comparison to what Indiana's did. I mean, they had their flurries, they had their moments, but not consistently, especially in game 6, Brunson wasn't, his normal self.
The end of game 5 either.
Yeah. And Bridges and OG both struggled tremendously with their 3-point shooting. I don't really understand that. I mean, they were good all season long, and they were terrible from a shot that they made at a 40% clip, that corner 3 from the left side. Like, that's what the offense is designed to get them shots, and they consistently missed them.
They weren't like necessarily contested shots that they were missing in the playoffs. The campaign signing for me, I wasn't really a big fan of his, but I definitely felt like he was one of those guys that when he's on your team, you love him. When you're playing against him, you hate him. So, I'm glad he's on the team in that aspect. But it definitely felt like a low end move from the jump. I did like the Shamet move, and this is actually going to be a transition to Thibodeau, and hit the year he had. I said this in the beginning of the year. Once Shamet got hurt, once Precious got hurt, I knew Tibbs was playing from behind the, like he was behind everybody else as far as like having a full season to implement the things that he wants to do, and Mitchell Robinson as well. Once Mitchell Robinson was like, "Oh, Christmas," and it kept getting pushed back, I'm like, this is really a setback for us that nobody's really acknowledging or talking about. But I stand on that. I think had we had the full healthy roster from the beginning, I think there's a chance Mitchell Robinson would have started from the beginning, number one. Whether you like that or don't. But Mitchell Robinson's impact this year, especially in the playoffs, is phenomenal. But yeah, I think Shamet would have been a key part of the rotation. I think that was evident even before he came back, just by essentially holding the spot for him and not giving it to someone else who, whether it be Morris or whoever it could have been. Once I said, "Oh, they holding that spot for him," Tibbs wants him in the rotation. Tibbs kind of believes in him. I don't think that was an organizational decision. I think that was a coaching decision. Because why not have a healthy body to start the year? You still would have had the opportunity to bring Shamet back later. You just would have had to wait. You would have had to wait till a certain time to do it. So I think Tibbs was behind the ball. But that being said, I am one of those people who thinks he should have utilized the guys we had. And I do think a lot of circumstances have to do with it. Hukporti, I believe, would have been in the rotation had he not got hurt. I think he would have at the very least got Sims minutes, right? And maybe would have brought in the decision to start Mitchell Robinson earlier in his return, knowing you got a real backup center. Um, kind of forgot where I was going with this. So, I mean, anything you want to
Well, let me
jump
ask
on?
you a question then, if you don't mind. So, if you can only bring back one of Wright, Shamit, Payne, and let's throw Precious in there. If you can only bring back one of those four guys, which one's it going to be?
Say it again.
Shamit,
Payne, Shamit.
Payne, Shamit, Wright, and Precious. You can only bring back one. Which one? Because I think they're all free agents. I don't think we have control over any of them. But if you could only bring back one, which one are you bringing back?
I mean, probably Shamit. I think number one, he's gonna be cheaper than, you know what I mean, like trying to bring Precious back. And I think you gotta find somebody to fill in for Precious elsewhere. But out of those guys, yeah, Cam, I think we could upgrade from within. You said right?
Yeah.
I would probably say Shamit still, but Wright would be a close second.
Because I feel like there's going to be a lot of changes, even at the margins on this team, even if it's different faces for those minimum contract guys. Like, because Precious is not a minimum contract guy, but every one of those other guys is. And I'm not saying that they're going to get better deals elsewhere. They may not. But I don't see a world where all of those guys are back. Do you?
No, I don't. No, I think at the very least two are gone. I think Precious is gone because he was underutilized, and considering he's the guy that had seniority, he's especially in this series against the Pacers, a guy who had familiarity from last year. You know what I mean, like, and was underutilized or however you want to categorize it, but barely played. With a track record, I think that was telling about his future on this team. Me personally, I thought that was an advantage where he should have played more, especially against Indiana, playing against them previously last year. Experience with Pascal from as a teammate and an opponent. The switchability. He has flaws like everybody else that comes off the bench. You know what I mean? But I thought his strengths were a bigger advantage than, his playing time warranted. But yeah, the fact that he didn't play in this series and didn't really play during the playoffs, I think he's gone. The fact that they held on to Shamit all year, I think he has an opportunity to be brought back. And the fact that Wright rolls in the rotation, you know what I mean, which is a very hard thing to do under Tibbs, gives him a shot to come back. And the fact that Cam lost his role in the rotation, he's a goner. That's my logic in that order.
Yeah, I agree with you about Payne, especially. Right, I'm kind of on the fence about. I mean, his lack of ability to hit 3-point shots, I think, is his undoing. I think you've got to find someone in a similar. Although he was terrific defensively, but it's just like the Knicks are. You either can defend and you can't shoot, or you can shoot and you can't defend. Like, we have very few players who can consistently do both, and it's very frustrating because it seems like you got to either have the offensive lineup out there or the defensive lineup out there, or mix and match. And when you mix and match, it seems like it breaks down in either direction. You know what I'm saying?
The thing with Wright is he had a good outing shooting as well. So it's tough for me to say how detrimental his shooting is for us. You know what I mean? Like when I'm looking at the negatives and the positives, like this past series, he missed some wide open shots that were crucial in those moments. But him getting into the games from the jump, he was shooting up, he was on fire. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like he was hitting his three. So it it's questionable in that aspect, but his defensive if his defensive impact is also undeniable. But that's why I wouldn't put him first. And the only reason I'm putting Shamit first is the track record of them holding on to him when they could have utilized the roster spot and waited to see how he recovers later. And the fact that, you know what I mean, he brings a shooting dynamic that we desperately need. Um so yeah. Let's so yeah, I really want to just talk about the season, congratulate the season. It seems like everybody wants to talk about fire tips. Everybody wants to talk about trade cat. You know what I mean? Everybody wants to talk about how it don't work or it hasn't worked. And before I get into the trade rumors and all that, I want to ask you what do you think we could do as presently constructed? Let's say top six, top seven um players, whether that's Mitch, Hart, bench, or and Deuce. You know what I mean? So starting five plus Deuce, Hart, Mitch, whatever one's starting, whatever one's coming on. Top seven staying together. Um, with those guys, what type of growth do you think is an acceptable? You know what I mean? Like we're not just reaching for the stars. What can you expect in the area of growth? Um, I guess let's start with Deuce, and we'll work our way through the starting. You know what I mean? Through the starting five, six.
Well, Deuce, it's a matter. Just make shots, bro. He was 9 for 27 in the Pacers series. Like just make shots. If your defense is good, you're a little bit undersized, but you play well with Brunson and the minutes that you get with him. Even though he's not making shots, he's still like +5 offensive net player for the Knicks and advanced stats, which I don't really understand, but I'm just reporting the stats. I don't know the methodology behind them. But so from that perspective, I think McBride is a good player. He's undersized, which limits him, I think, to a certain degree. I don't think he's ever going to be a point guard. And if you're going to be a shooting guard or a wing, you have to knock down shots. Like you can't shy away and disappear in the critical moments. And we needed a big series from McBride, and we didn't get that on either side of the floor in this series. I didn't think. And honestly, I didn't think his defense was very good in the Detroit series either. I thought he played extremely well against Boston, but
Yeah,
that
he
was
found his.
that was about it as far as his, like, I thought he was great against the Celtics, and I thought he was below average in both the Detroit and the Indiana series for whatever reason.
Yeah, I had high hopes for Deuce. I didn't know if he would reach it this year, but I also don't know if my high hopes for him moving forward it aren't obtainable. And for me, I was comparing him, and not in the style of play, but just in the progression of career. And this is before what I mean. I seen the year he had this year, but hoping he could be the Peyton Pritchard type player for us that Pritchard was. I'm gonna say last year, because I think Pritchard even elevated his game this year, that I wasn't expecting. Um, I don't know how much he can progress to that, but I guess it's still on the table if he's here, and you know what I mean. To your point, hit shots. And I don't know if you saying hit shots would mean he elevates into that type of role. Maybe that was high hopes for me. But that was the guy that I was referencing early in it, before the season, that hopefully he could fill into the Peyton Pritchard role Um,
Well, he's a 36% 3-point shooter, I think. I'd like to see that 38 would be better, right? 30, 38, 39 would certainly be better. So if he could increase that. And is it just me, or every time he attacks the rim and tries to dunk on somebody and it turns into a turnover? It feels like he does that a lot. And his overall field goal percentage is just like 40%. So he's not much better shooter from inside the arc than he is from outside the arc. And I think that's
here,
an issue as well. If you're just going to have him be a spot up guy, that's one thing, but it seems like that's
here,
not always his role with the offense, even though that seems like that's the role that his skill set seems to indicate he should have.
here's what I'll say about that. I think you're right. A lot of times it's a block, you know what I mean, or turnover, whatever the case. But I do like the fact that when he goes to the rim now, he's going with that type of ferocity as opposed to not going to the rim, which was a big pet peeve of mine from him, and picking up the ball, and you know what I mean. Like, I like the fact that he's going to the rim and attacking it. My motto has always been, you you might get the whistle, and we've seen it whether it was right or wrong. You get that whistle. You know what I mean. You put the onus on the defense. Um, but yeah, in this series, it felt like a block every time or a turnover every time. But I'd rather him be aggressive going to the rim than not going to the rim, and not putting pressure on the defense. So I think that's just an area I'm looking at it as an area that he's gotten better at. You know what I mean? Attacking the rim. Now you got to finish. You know what I mean? Now you got to get the fouls. Now you got to not get it blocked. But
Yeah, this is going to sound like an insult, and I don't mean it to be. He's a $4 million player, and he plays like a $4 million player. Like, you get what you would expect for what you're paying him. You get pretty much what you would expect.
I mean, you could argue he slightly exceeds his
Yeah,
payroll.
I will agree with that. Absolutely. Yeah, but not what. And
Yeah,
there were points in the season where I thought he way exceeded it, and then in the playoffs, I think you would argue that he
yeah,
might have even been a little bit lower than it. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree, and I think when he signed it, I thought it was a steal. So you know what I mean? Like, now it seems about fair, closer to fair than a steal. You want to go with Hart or Mitchell Robinson? You who are
No
we
matter to
considering?
me. I've got
Who
plenty
who are we
of
who are we considering the bench player right now?
Well, I think I've seen and heard a lot of people say this, and I kind of think that it's true. The best version of this team is going to be one where Josh Hart is a bench player.
So let's go with Josh Hart and his year, and where if he could get better. This was a career year for him, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely, it was. The triple
Oh,
doubles were amazing. Like, he literally had some unbelievable games, and when you are in the same breath as Walt Clyde Frazier in anything, whether it be fashion, but especially when it's basketball, you have reached the pinnacle. Let me tell you. So much respect for Josh Hart, and I think where it comes from with me is just it's based on who else is in the starting lineup that I don't think Hart is a great fit there, as it is opposed to Josh Hart is not a starting caliber player. I think Josh Hart could start a lot of different places. With the lineup that we have here, I'm not sure it maximizes our efficiency. But again, he's an interesting player because he'll give you 4 or 5 extra possessions per game with his hustle, and he'll give away 2 or 3 possessions per game with his mind-numbingly stupid turnovers and his dribble and then jump in the air and have no idea where you're going to go with the ball, or and he has his moments that are absolutely frustrating. But on balance, I think you need players like Josh Hart to win a championship. So I certainly don't want to get rid of Josh Hart, but I think if you had the luxury where you could kind of just plug him in when you needed him, as opposed to like relying upon him, I think that would be a more ideal situation.
He might be the poster child for less is more, right? Because he's
Yeah.
gonna give maximum effort every second he's on the floor. So you're never questioning that. But sometimes too much responsibility leaves room
Basketball
for
IQ is just not there all the time with him. I don't know what it is. He just go, and it's not an all the time things, because sometimes he reads the game and makes some plays that are eye popping, but it just seems like sometimes his focus disappears and he like, what are you doing, Josh? What what was that? Like he'll have a couple of moments of that a game, and then conversely, he'll get the tap out or the steal deflection. He gets all those hustle plays. He turns 50-50 plays into 70-30 plays. In a lot of ways, he's the epitome of what Knicks fans used to expect and root for. Like the 90s Knicks, Josh Hart would have fit in like a glove on that team.
The problem is he turns those 50-50 to 70-30, but sometimes his turnovers just ends up being a you know what I mean?
Yes, goes right back to 40-60.
or worse, because it's a turnover. So, you know what I mean? Like it's like 99-1. Like it's but yeah, I think it's tough. Like how do you be down on a guy who's had a career year and his impact maybe not as visible this year as in his tenure with the team, but his impact on the games, on the wins, you know what I mean, is undeniable. Like, when we're talking about impact, I guess it's a transition if unless you have more on heart, but Mitchell Robinson, man, I'm going right to that because of the impact and his impact in these playoffs.
Phenomenal. In game 6, you could legitimately make the case that he was the best player for us in the first half. Like legitimate, no joke, not exaggerating, not anything. He was literally keeping us in that game at certain points with the way that he was getting extra rebounds. He was dunking the ball ferociously. He had a couple of lobs. He had a great putback. He was everywhere defensively. I mean, he was just, and I'm like you, Tony. We're Mitchell Robinson, fan club. So it's great to see, and that comes from someone who's fully expected that. And I've said this all year, just to be consistent, that I expected Robinson to be gone after this season. That was my full expectation. And the reasons behind that were his salary is decent. You can send it out in a trade. The front office did not originally draft him. He predates them. He's been here for 7 years. Everybody else who predated the front office is no longer here. So, put that, whatever you want to make of that. But then as Mitchell Robinson came back in this postseason, he showed what an invaluable piece that he can be. And yes, he has his flaws. He can't shoot a free throw to save his life. And he doesn't have an offensive game except for offensive rebounds, but he can still carve out a niche where he can be a very productive player. And he's unique to what this team, nobody else on the team protects the rim like he protects the rim. And that's a valuable resource to have. And he's back to like his rookie weight. So he's very spry on the perimeter. And there were times when he was just flat out guarding Halliburton on the perimeter in that series, like flat out. And it wasn't like, it was crazy because it seemed like when Miles Turner was on him, he had more trouble keeping Turner in front of him than he did Halliburton. And I was like, how does that happen?
And how many games did he play? Like in total, did he hit 40? I don't think so.
I don't know.
I don't think so. You know what I mean? Like, I really don't think so.
He made it tough for the Knicks. That's a tougher decision to make now than it was,
And I was ready to go out on a limb had we won this series. You know what I mean? Depending on how the last two games panned out. But to your point, the way the first half of game six started, like I was ready to make a case for him as the MVP of really for the playoffs for us, but I mean of the series. Because I'll talk about the playoffs in this entirety. Even the fact that, you know, I hate the strategy of fouling and hack a Mitch or whatever the case, but the fact that teams had to deviate from their normal tendencies, their normal game plan, and include the hack a Mitch strategy. We've seen it throughout the playoffs, some a little bit more than others, some to a detriment, some right at the right time. But again, that has to be a strategic thought process of the coach, even when you do it at the right time, because you're holding it, you're waiting for it. You know what I mean? You're waiting for the opportunity to utilize it. But his impact, the reason is they just want him off the floor. You know what I mean? It's not like he was having a monster offensive game. I mean, he was always having a monster rebounds game, but his defensive presence, whether he's blocking a shot or not, his offensive rebounds, his defense in space, oh, his blocking threes on the perimeter. I mean, again, there's flaws, there's mistakes, but his continued growth, I agree with you. I think it might have been an easier decision to move on for him. Um, but then again, they didn't, and they could have while he was hurt. They could have, or you know what I mean, as soon as he came back before the deadline, whatever. The fact that they held on to him, part of me is like they know his value, but I think his value increased.
Without a doubt. I mean, and to answer your question, he played 18 playoff games and 17 regular season games, so
So under
35
40,
games total.
yeah.
So under 40. But to your point, and thank you for bringing this up. This is why I love being on shows like this. You have to get a body on Robinson. You have to account for him. And when you have to get a body on Robinson, that means that you can leak out less. So you have
Mm-hmm.
to do other, you have to, and that was, was supremely effective against Boston. They were so worried about getting a body on him that they, it affected the rest of their perimeter defense. And that's an amazing impact from a guy who can't shoot from outside of 2 feet. That's pretty incredible.
And I think opposing teams adjusted to his presence more than we did, than his own team. Meaning, I think they didn't utilize him in as the lob threat. We've seen it more, like in his playoffs. You know what I mean? We might have seen 6 lobs to him. You know what I mean? But I feel like when you know offensive, when you're playing offense and you know the defensive schemes, now you can manipulate. So I don't think they manipulated to find Mitchell Robinson and utilize him for more lobs and more situations like that. Because to your point, if he's running to the rim, you got to put a body on him. If you're pulling up off of a screen from him and he's running to the rim, you got to put a body on him. You know what I mean? So it takes away that threat if you're utilizing that pick and roll with him more often.
That's a great point. I actually that's something I thought of this year. I thought he was more physical on his screens this year than he ever has been. I thought he did a good job of actually making contact on his screens, which was a weakness I thought of his game in years past. I thought he did a really good job of that. And I went early on in his career. I thought that his ceiling was prime DeAndre Jordan. Like I just thought their games are very similar in the way they collect rebounds, and but the Clippers had Chris Paul, who lobs for days, and you know what I mean. The Knicks don't really have a lot of players who throw good lot. That's not Jalen Brunson's forte at all, and I think that's because of his size. McCall does it a little bit, but I don't know how much those two shared the court together, but so. if you could get him in the dunker spot and lob the ball and get some easy dunks, that would be good. But I don't think he's ever going to reach that potential at this point in his career. It's 7 years in. You kind of are who you are at this. You know what I mean? People don't usually make massive leaps in their production at this point in their career, in his career, but he's a productive player. He's on a decent contract. If you're going to move him, it's got to be for a significant upgrade. It's not one of these things where you're just going to let him, you know what I mean? Because he not, he also has been here for 7 years, so he knows the systems, he knows the players, he knows his organizational IQ is very high.
I mean, to your point, theoretically, if you're moving him and you're looking for the attributes, like, all right, what are we trying to get back? You're gonna start naming most of his attributes. You know what I mean? Like the main things that you not gonna include for that, or that Mitch doesn't have, it would be like the free throw shooting and just like some offensive, any type of offensive game. But especially when you're talking about alongside or replacing Cat, you want a different dynamic. If he's coming off the bench, or if he's alongside him, you want opposite strengths.
And you have different looks, right? You can play Cat at the 4. You can play Cat by himself. You can play Mitch by himself. If Cat gets in foul trouble, not that he ever does that, but if he were to get in foul trouble once, then you could, you have a safety net, a security net there. He can, when they're in the game together, he kind of can make up for some of the things that Towns lacks. So. Again, he's a very unique player on this team. We don't have really anybody else who duplicates the things he does well. Last year we did, because we had Isaiah Hartenstein, who's a very similar player. And so we did have that duplication. But this year, we didn't see it, and we survived without it. I don't know that it's necessary, but I do think that when you can throw – when you're in a tight playoff series and you have an added dimension that you can bring to your team that has to be accounted for, I think that brings value on the margins, and I think that's where Robinson makes his impact.
All right, I gotta address Mongoose, because he said, Tony, why do you think he wasn't a lob threat? Hint: it's not Tibbs, it's not Mitch, it's the ball handler. He continues. RJ was tall enough to see Mitch. He always fed him. Hart also feeds Mitch because he could see him. Jalen doesn't feed him. It's on him. So it sounds like you're saying because he's too small, he can't see Mitch and can't see the lob.
He doesn't pass much to Towns either. If we're talking about Brunson, he doesn't pass to Towns much either, interestingly enough. I think he had like 1 or 2 assists to Towns in the entire Pacers series, which is insane.
And then he says, it looks like we only ever set screens ever to mismatch. Like, that was our only objective. To mismatch, like, for Brunson's advantage. Again, we'll get into it at some point. But how is that on Brunson? How is that? I think it has to be implemented by the coach, to be honest. I think over the course of another year, I think more things will be implemented for more players. I think this year it was really about the familiarity. We know what Brunson is capable of. We've witnessed it for multiple years now. And there's a comfort level in that, and everybody else could kind of find their way. I think that was this year. I think moving forward, it's up to Tibbs to implement plays, implement sets, implement roles, tiers, the pecking order, and I think that comes with time. I don't think it all can fall on this one year, especially with all the positives that were in this year.
And to your point, Tony, Brunson is on a learning curve too. Did you know this was the highest assist per game year of his career? No, that's not. I mean, he had averaged more, and assists are, as Ajay would say, assists are a fake stat because you depend on somebody else to make the bucket. But he had more assists this year than he's ever had in his career. And I think he's learning how to play, the play to be the lead guy, but get his teammates involved. Because remember, he started off with Luka as the secondary player. Luka would pass to him, he would make shots and kill people off the bounce.
So his role has never been more different.
Right.
If you want to be honest, right? That's a great point. Because he never was he didn't start as the number one option. But to your point, when he was on the floor, it was either without the number one option where he could be the number one option, or it was with the number one option where he was the secondary option. And so even when he got the ball, his job wasn't to find the next guy. It was go get the bucket, go finish the play. And then you come here where he elevates into the number one option. And even with that, he deferred to Randall. You know what I mean? I'm gonna say Randall took a lot of pressure off of him, but he took a lot more pressure off of Randall. You know what I mean? But he elevated into that number one option. And then you look at the course of the last year where, I mean, he had to do everything. Guys was dropping like flies, and we needed every point, every bucket, everything we could get from him. This year was an adjustment. So for him to increase his assists to a career high, there's effort in that. You know what I mean? To Ajay's point, that's not counting all the missed shots that could have or should have been assists. So it is a work in progress. Every year you got to adapt. You got to adapt to your teammates. You know what I mean? And this was a whole new set of teammates for him. You got to adapt to your role. This is the best probably collective that he's played with.
Also, though, and you may disagree with this, I don't think he's ever going to be the Trae Young, Tyrese Halliburton 11 assists per game guy. I don't really think that's his game. I think 7, 8, yeah, I can see him doing that, but I think he's at his best when he's
because he's not going to generate assists, but
Yeah.
what he can do is make the right read, right, make the right play. So basketball IQ will get him to, like you said, 8 assists. Those guys, Trae Young, Halliburton, Jason Kidd, they lead you into assists. You know what I mean? Like they're seeing the assist before the player who's getting the ball and making a basket sees it. You know what I mean?
Tom
They
Stockton got to pass the ball in the pick and roll to Karl Malone for years, and is the all-time NBA assist leader because of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's that's part of it. I just, to me, and Brunson's a great player. I just don't know if that's JB's game, and I don't think it has to be. By the way, I think this team can be successful without Brunson trying to be Tyrese Halliburton or Trae Young or what name your high assist point guard guy. Like, the game has changed so much too. I think that very much is the case where you have your your wings, your guards, and your bigs. Like, and there's a lot of overlap in all of those nowadays because you've got 6'9" guys who are guards, and you've got you got 7-footers who can shoot the ball like crazy and assist like Joker. Like, so it's crazy.
Oh, shout out to JJ. He said, Tony, Jeff, is Halliburton now the most hated in Knicks history? I'm gonna say in modern history, 100%. I think he surpassed Trey Young. Um, Even though he doesn't necessarily receive the Trey Young um treatment from the fan base. But yeah, number one, surpassed Trey Young. I think it's unequivocally he's the second coming of Reggie Miller.
Uh, if you want to say most hated Pacer, maybe Michael Jordan's going to be my most hated until the day that I die. Y'all forget the Knicks in the '80s were the second best. '80s and '90s the second best team. I don't know how many times. And Jordan's smug little smirk and punch him in the face.
But that's why I said modern. That's why I said modern.
Okay,
you think about it.
I'm old. You're right.
We are. Listen, just like literally, I hated Jordan so much that I didn't even appreciate him until it was all said and done. You know what I mean? Like, but I could never give him his flowers while he was playing. I never while he was playing. I was trying to find anybody. Oh, nah, Magic is better. Nah, he's, you know what I mean? Like, I was not trying to give Mike any type of props or anything. So he was definitely number one all time. But modern, I think
you can put Halliburton top five. I don't think there's any doubt about that. He's done more damage to the Knicks' actual, postseason hopes than anybody. And if really, the Pacers have eliminated the four biggest postseason runs, if you want to make the argument that we've had in this century. So it's like, as they got us in 2000, they got us in 2013, and they got us this year, and they got us last year.
So are the Pacers public enemy number one all time?
I don't know. For the series. Normally my blog name is I Hate the Boston Celtics, and I do, but for the series I changed it to I Hate the Indiana Pacers. And really, the more that you're talking about it, the more I feel like maybe I do need to keep it as the Indiana Pacers, but I don't want to give them that much credit. But
and they talking mad trash right now too. I'm gonna get into that. That's fair, but that's one of the reasons why Halliburton I dislike him, because it's me and Sim was talking.
Everybody hated Trey Young when he was rolling dice on center court, where the Knicks crushed them the next two games. Nobody thought second.
Well, even with Trey Young, I felt like his energy towards us is warranted. I really feel like we started it. You know what I'm saying? Oh, usually we appreciate as Knicks fans, we're basketball fans as well. You know what I mean? It's not to the contrary of popular opinion. I feel like we appreciate good basketball.
We did Kobe, we did LeBron, we did. Yeah, I would agree. In fact, that made me sick to my stomach seeing Kobe get MVP chance at the Garden. It's like, no, he doesn't play for us. We don't do that.
But you know when we stop appreciating good basketball? When you're not humble, when you become showboaty, when you become, you know what I mean, disrespectful. So I think that's where Halliburton is leaning.
Halliburton too he's very inconsistent. Like, he's a guy, like in game 4, he had 30, 12, and 15, which with 0 turnovers, one of the greatest games I've ever seen. And then in game 5, was he even on the court in game 5? In game 6, he didn't really show up in the
halftime
half. And then in the fourth quarter, I think he either assisted or made every field goal that the team had. But again, they were up 10 at that point. It's a lot easier. But he had the miracle shot that bounced in game 1 in the clutch too. So I can't really say much about that. But the Pacers were the better team, and you just have to give them credit for that. And I don't think they were last year, but I think they were this year.
Oh, I want to respect your time. One, so I just want to address the elephants in the room, and you know some of the trade rumors and discussions. Um, I haven't really watched anything since like Knicks related since since we lost.
You got
But
to
I
detox. You got to separate.
but the headlines are the headlines, so you know what I mean. The titles and everything are there, and today I decided I was gonna check out um
Yeah, what they
damn,
say.
now I feel like I'm a butcher his name, but but the dude Jones, Bohami,
Bomani Jones?
yes, how you say it now?
Bomani Jones?
Yes. I was watching his show today. I don't know why I'm drawing a blank, and I was gonna butcher it, but so he was talking about a athletic article. Um, I think it was Cole wrote by Fred Katz. I don't remember the first guy's name. He mentioned
I
as
think
as a
James Edwards the third.
it wasn't him. I would have remembered.
Oh,
I'm familiar with that guy.
okay.
Um, but anyway, he was talking about the article and referencing that the majority of the article was blaming Cat or talking about Cat's shortcomings or deficiencies. He also mentioned how it was very little to no blame given to Brunson, and then a huge part, or maybe 20% or whatever, given to like Tibbs and anything. So again, I didn't read it myself, so I can't quote this, but I could definitely go by the headlines of everything that I've been scrolling past on YouTube and other platforms, and I mean, Hoops Tonight. I know he did something. I didn't watch it, but it said Tibbs or Towns got to go. You know what I mean, for the work, or Towns has to be traded. Um, it didn't work. So for me personally, the my first initial thought is, again, this is year one, and you look at a huge part of Indiana's success, I think, was the fact that this was not year one for them. This was year two for them. And they've, you know what I mean? And a huge part of the Celtics winning a chip last year is how long they were together, and how much growth they adored together. So my immediate stance, like my show today was supposed to be uh continue to build, don't destroy it. You know what I mean? Like, don't tear it down. But I'm looking at all these titles and rumors this and rumors that. So I'm like, I still stand where I stand, but there are situations and scenarios that I'm okay with. I want to start with Giannis because I feel like number one is the least likely thing to happen. Number one, for it to happen, it has to be Giannis himself saying, "I want to play in New York," and
Which he
that's it. But and,
but it would
but
have
that
to
but
be
that's it.
only in New York and only for the Knicks was what
Only
everybody.
for the Knicks. Yeah, only for the Knicks. It would have to be on the table that way for us to even have a chance,
Right.
because we don't have the assets. And if it's a bidding war, I must say between any other team or any three teams, and we're included, I don't think we have the assets. This was not without even naming a team. I think any team will have more capital for the Bucks to want to do. So I think that's a pipe dream. Um, and I don't think the chances of him singling out New York in particular are high. But what are your thoughts on Giannis and the rumors of
Well, I mean, it depends on what players have to go out in that deal. You know what I mean, to really make an adequate assessment of what it would look like, right? I'm assuming that Towns is going to have to be the centerpiece of that deal just from a salary perspective.
Mm-hmm.
You know, from a defensive standpoint, if that's really the major piece that you have going out, and you still have OG and you still have Bridges and you have Josh Hart and you have Jalen Brunson, the defense in that lineup is significantly better. You know, I don't know if Mitch is or not, but
now that I'm thinking about it, you know what would for us to even make it happen, it probably would have to be a multiple team trade. It probably wouldn't be a straight up trade. It would probably be whoever could get us draft capital that we could then give to Milwaukee. Like
right.
so that being said, it probably would have to be I'm assuming OG, which probably is the hardest because of how much he makes. But it would probably have to be somebody else in the core that gives us back some draft capital that we don't even keep in that we're giving to the Bucks. So that might be Mitchell Robinson. Maybe he could get us one. You know what I mean? As a
again, until you see the specifics of a deal, that deal would be complicated, and you know, there's a lot of moving parts with it. And hey, it's the boss man. How you doing, Mr. Sim?
Hey, what's happening? How you doing?
I'm sorry. You just made me in my brain. I'm like, oh, this is what it feels like when James Dolan pop up.
We're both tired. Sim's like, you guys are out of here. Your Towns and your Bridges, you're both gone.
Man, I just thought that was funny.
I just think that's just far-fetched, and it's not. I just logistically very difficult to do. And is that even something the Knicks want to do? I don't know. What do you think, Sim?
What is that?
Giannis the Knicks?
Giannis.
Well, let me just preface by saying I feel like for it to happen, it has to be him speaking out and saying Knicks are nowhere. You know what I mean? Like Knicks, because I don't think we have the assets to kind of go after him, unless we're making it a multiple team trade where we're acquiring picks that are then being ciphered right to the Bucks.
Right. Now, you know, would I trade Cat for Giannis? Yes, I would. I think the team would have to change a little bit, maybe. You know, your starting center might need to be someone who can shoot. You know, instead of Mitch. But I would do it. Is it something that I think the team is trying to do? I don't know. You know what I mean? It's hard to know what they're thinking right now. You know what I'm saying? Because what I've seen about this front office is, I don't know if they get caught up in the moment. I think they look at their evaluation of the team, you know, to figure out what needs to be done going forward. You know, so it's hard for me to know if they think this is a championship roster or or not.
I got a question for you. This just popped into my head because throughout the season in general for us, right, as fans, the expectations changed throughout the year. Is that fair?
Yep.
Do you think the expectations from the organization changed from the beginning of the year and then throughout the year, and even if you want to include, you know what I mean, like in the playoffs?
Yeah.
And if so, how much does that? Because I would think if long term, from the big perspective, they're gonna go by what they thought from when they made the moves and why they made the moves, and then where they ended, and not necessarily go with the ups and downs of the
Right.
feelings throughout.
Right.
But go ahead.
I think their expectations could definitely change. You know what I'm saying? I think they look at the team and how they play, despite the ups and downs. You know what I mean? Because I think they know in basketball you're gonna have ups and downs, but I think they look at them and say, okay, yeah, we think this is for real, or and I think they in their brain also determine whether or not it's a fluke. And I'm pretty sure that's a discussion that they have. You know what I mean? Sitting around the table, like, is this for real or is this a fluke? Is this something that we can repeat, or do you think no, it's not something we can repeat? Because I mean, you have to because other teams are going to get better. The Pistons are going to get better. You know what I'm saying? Indiana might get better. You know what I mean? All teams are going to get better. Orlando, these guys are going to get better. So you have to look at it that way, I think.
I
And
wonder.
make a determination if you think it's real, or okay, it happened. This is why they think it happened this year, and then determine, can we repeat it or do better than that?
I wonder how much they're like whatever they felt that made them make the moves,
Mm-hmm.
and their vision.
Right.
I wonder where it stands after year one. I really do.
I can
I,
guarantee you that there's some conversation as to whether or not they're better with the cat trade or without the cat trade.
mm.
Just like fans have that conversation, I think they have that conversation in the front office too.
I mean, it's been documented, um, without specifically naming names, that some within the organization, wasn't sure about the move.
Right.
That definitely came out early. Let me get to the super chat, and then unless you want to add anything, Jeff, about Giannis, we'll move to KD.
No, I said my
Uh,
piece.
Jason Benjamin, appreciate you. He says, I'm not feeling the trade for Giannis thing. Older, ball dominant player who can't shoot. I just don't know how he would fit. I would welcome it depending on the price. I'm not trading Cat for Giannis.
Mm.
I mean, ideally, if you could have them both, and Brunson, I do think, you I never even thought of that as a. I always thought he would have to be included. That and that's part of why it's
Yeah, I mean, I think he would have to be included to, or you're giving up so
I
many
mean
players to
I mean
keep.
OG has
You could give up
the second highest contract, right?
Mm-hmm.
On the team. What's he at? 35 or 40?
45, I think. He making a bunch. Let me look it up.
Brunson's at 30, right?
So OG has an average annual salary of 42.5. That's the average for 26-27 is 42.5, 27-28 is 45.4, and 28-29 is 48.3.
I still think, unfortunately, like let's say it was Giannis and Mitch, right? Let's say that's what we needed. I don't know the math, but I still think you would have to move somebody else to acquire some draft picks to send that way as well. But again, if Giannis is saying New York, Knicks, that's the only way I think we even have a conversation, because if there's a bidding war and you're adding any other multiple teams, I don't think we have the assets, the draft capital. Do is there a world where we get them without draft capital? I don't see it.
I don't think so. You gotta, you know, I don't think so. You got to get a third team involved to, or fourth, to make the draft capital happen. Because essentially they're going to be breaking, you know, they move Giannis, they're breaking down probably and trying to rebuild. It's hard for me. I would think, you know, they would then say, okay, let's rebuild, you know, and if they have, I don't know, who knows the thinking of what, who knows they're thinking. And, you know, but if you're paying, still, if you're paying somebody 42, 49 million, you know, you want that to be someone that you can rebuild around.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's not like they had, I mean, unless they doing it, moving everybody, and maybe they getting the fit of pieces with OG with Dame, but I would think the what you're getting back for Dame is going to be significantly less than what you're getting back for Giannis at this point. So I can't even see them using the Dame trade to kind of, you know what I mean, build around OG. So yeah, I don't know. Again,
I mean, money wise, Cat could do it. Right? Giannis is next year 51.9 million. That's Giannis for next year. And I think Cat is 49 for next year. All right. So, you know, Cat 26. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Cat's 57 for next year. For 25, 26, Cat's 53.
And Giannis is what? 51?
Giannis is 51.
So yeah, him in a minimal contract. But I mean that makes sense. So again, like I said earlier, if you move in Mitch, maybe Mitch could get you some cat you know what I mean? Like a first, maybe, you know what I mean? And then you just move that over to the
I
Bucks.
think the
But
trade would have to be after the draft because that would unlock our pick 7 years out.
Yeah, there you go. Yep.
And then we would have the first round. I don't remember what pick. Did we trade the 31 to the Nets or the 30? What pick does the Nets own?
What
I mean, whatever pick
sure.
this, we would be,
if it's 25, 27, and 29, then you could, then I guess the 31 pick is available right now, or you could do the 32 pick instead of the 31 after the draft.
So the Knicks traded 2025, 2027, 2029, and 2031.
Okay, so they can't trade the 32 then.
Right.
Because they've already traded the 31. Wow.
Right.
Yeah, that's not happening. We don't have the draft assets to I just put that baby to bed. I don't see any way on earth that if they're parting ways with Giannis that they're going to accept the package that we could offer for him.
No.
Yeah, I mean, the front office has done some remarkable things in maneuvering, but I don't see how they could do that without, you know, acquiring some more picks just to give up. Shout out to Jason again. I believe we need another facilitator. I may get some tomatoes, but I would look into Ben Simmons. Shout out to Sim because we've been having this conversation for a couple days.
Yeah.
Or we could try to pry Alonzo Ball from the Bulls. I said keep the core and improve the bench. I'm not opposed that's my initial stance. Keep the core, improve the bench. I like Lonzo. I think he could fit and help as well. It's probably a lesser risk because it shouldn't come at the same type of money or whatever. But I'm just worried about injuries, and we're gonna talk about that more before we get out of here. But which I know how you feel about Ben Simmons, and, and what's your thoughts on Lonzo? And then Jeff, you could talk about them both. And mind you, these are we're assuming to be like minimal contracts.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
I would definitely take Lonzo Ball over Ben Simmons if he was available and we could get him. That's without a doubt. That's easy, right? I think he fits the bill of what I'm thinking of perfectly. He's
facilitator.
He can hit the three. He pushes the ball up the court. He plays defense. He's 6'6", right? So he can see over top of the defense. I think he fits it perfectly. You know what I mean? And he has obviously, more of a track record in the league than Ben Simmons. I would definitely go with Lonzo Ball. Lonzo Ball, he makes $10 million next year. That's the cap hit, $10 million. But there's a team option for $10 million for him. No, I'm sorry. No, it's not a team option. It's a team option in 26, 27. Next year it's just $10 million.
I don't know if we have a guy that we could also get draft capital or not, but or some cap relief, maybe, you know what I mean? But yeah. I would take the risk on Ball before Ben Simmons. Again, the big thing with Ben Simmons, like skill set, I think he would fit perfectly. Mindset, that's another thing. Jeff, what's your thoughts on those two guys?
Lonzo Ball has played 70 games in the last 4 years. He played 35 games this year. He didn't play at all the 2 years before, and he played 35 games the year before that. He's not a particularly good shooter from anywhere on the field, on the court. He's almost an average three-point shooter. He was a good defender at one time. I haven't seen him much lately. Too much of an injury risk. I would probably pass on him. I am not a fan of Ben Simmons. I just think he's a head case, and I don't think the Knicks could fix him, and I don't think he fits in with the prototype of the type of players that Knicks typically like. We typically like guys who are efficient catch and shoot kind of guys, and he won't even take a jump shot. I don't think we need that. Actually, if you're gonna bring someone like that, maybe look at Chris Paul. I don't know. Like
we've had
role. You're talking about a few minutes a game. I watched a bunch of Spurs games this year, and Paul didn't look terrible. He's got playoff experience. If you want someone who could throw a lob to Mitch in the second unit, you'll certainly have that. Paul is smart. He's a good shooter. Not the defender that he was, but he's not bad. He can still put that ball on a string. He's a dribble penetrator. He's a threat. To me, if you're going to get a guy like that, Chris Paul would be the investment that I would make.
Jeff, I only laugh because it's like you've been in our private conversations off air. We've been talking about Chris Paul as well. I think Sim was talking about him early, like for some years now, but I agree with Chris Paul as well, and I probably would put him first out of the three because of basketball wise, yes, but mindset, right? I think he fits.
And he played all 82 games in San Antonio last year and shot almost 38% from three. So, I mean, his minutes weren't like amazing or anything, but he elevates. He can still play.
He elevates guys that are on the floor with him, but he also elevates guys like for the future as far as like the things.
And he played 28 minutes a game last year and he started, I guess, all of them, but he played 28 minutes a game.
That's a good number. That's a good number.
Like that. Those are good numbers. That's a huge upgrade from Cam Payne or DeLon Wright or any of the other bozos we were trotting out there this postseason. I can promise you that.
Yeah. Now
You know,
real quick, Sim.
yeah.
I just wanted to say, when I spoke about Ben Simmons, I also said, pardon me, we would have to be moving on from Mitchell Robinson. We can't have them both on on a team, but because of their deficiencies from the free throw line and that sort. Um, but I think prototype and player type is really where we talk about like a facilitator, defender, maybe not so much shooter with Ben Simmons. But go ahead, Sim.
Yeah, yeah. You know, Chris Paul. My only issue with I love Chris Paul, and I would love to have him on his team, even if it's simply for his leadership skills, leadership ability. Right. I think even this year having Chris Paul on the team in a backup role, we our playoffs might look different. You know what I mean? We might not give up that game one. To be honest with you. Um, but I really want a guy in that starting lineup. I want a guy next to Brunson that can see over the defense.
Mm-hmm.
Look at how much we struggle. Now Chris Paul is maybe savvy enough, but still I think a bench role for him is I couldn't see him starting next to Brunson
That's a good
because
point.
they'd be so small in the backcourt.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously him coming off the bench would be perfect, actually. As a facilitator coming off the bench. But with Brunson out there on the floor, I really want to have someone. I just don't think McCall can do it, or OG, or Cat, but somebody who can see over the defense and facilitate. That way, Brunson can be off the ball, and that person can get the other guys involved. You know what I'm saying?
So you're looking. I mean, for Jeff's point and to your agreement, if he's the backup point guard, that's perfect.
Yeah.
But you're looking for somebody who could play alongside Brunson as well as you know what I mean, like to alternate.
I mean, they could, in certain situations, I think they could play alongside each other.
Yeah, Tibbs will do it.
They're very small. I'm just looking for someone that is tall, and can handle the ball. Is a legitimate ball handler, right? A legitimate facilitator next to Brunson that can see over the defense, that can get everyone else involved.
I mean,
and
I ain't gonna.
I think that's how, because in my opinion, Brunson's just he's not a facilitator. He's a scoring guard. You know what I'm saying? He can do it at times, especially when he's not, when his shot isn't hitting. But I think if we allow him to play off the ball some with a facilitator, we can get those other people involved. And I think we see better years from McCall, better years from OG. You know what I'm saying? Because now, they're getting the ball in the sweet spot. Brunson doesn't have that responsibility as much. He can play off the ball. Brunson can get some easier shots. Even in the playoffs, when we were doing some things to try to get Brunson the ball when he was off the ball, and they have him, Josh is bringing it up and he's cutting down around through the lane, and coming around and curling, and they're getting him the ball that way. It was still a struggle, and it would still it's like they're basically bringing the ball up just to try to find Brunson, to get him the ball free without Naismith on his back, right? And sometimes we're way out by half court trying to execute a screen, way out by half court, almost going back court. You know what I mean? I think a legitimate ball handler and facilitator negates all of that.
Here's what I'll say though. Chris Paul is a genuine ball handler. I guess that is a legitimate question. Like, can they play together? Right? Will Tibbs play them together as well? I think ideally, because of size and height, you don't want that. But would it theoretically it should work, right? Like you talk about get pure ball handler, pure point guard.
Yeah,
it could work. I think Also, though, you're gonna love this, Sim. I think you're gonna love this. I think Chris Paul might have the cachet to have Tibbs adjust and run some zone,
Maybe.
especially if you're utilizing those two,
Yeah.
like on a court at the same time.
Yeah. Maybe. Because defensively is where it would really be the big drawback, right?
Mhm.
Because now you're really giving up a lot of length to defend. And Chris Paul isn't the defender that he used to be. You know what I mean? So now you got at your point of attack, you either got Brunson or Chris Paul.
Now, here's the flip side, though.
So
Let's say, to Jeff's point, and he's just in that reserve role and not playing alongside Brunson.
mhm.
I think he also could help develop not just Brunson to like defense schematically, defensive, like he could elevate Brunson's defensive game, considering all the years in Chris Paul's career, he's always been small. He's never been a defensive liability, whether he was targeted or not. But in the same sense, he can do the same for Kolek. So I think with the two other point guards could learn from Chris Paul and his presence might be like priceless in a sense. I got one more super chat I want to get to, and then I want to talk about this Durant thing and get out of here. Sim, if you could pull up that thing that you sent me, because I know you said you wasn't familiar with the writer,
Yeah.
but
I don't know who he is.
shout out to Jason Benjamin again. He says, "Get me Jonathan Kuminga, please, if at possible." I think Kuminga is a nice young piece. We don't really have too many young pieces to bring in. I think he's a restricted free agent though, so I don't even think. I think, yeah, I don't even know if that's something we could. You know what I mean? If the money's we don't have much money anyway, and if the money's too low, Golden State gonna match it. Yeah, you know what I mean? Unless it's some type of sign and trade. Um, I don't even think we could do that without giving up one of our core five. And I don't know if I'm willing to have Kaminga here for OG or Macau. I mean, Macau, that maybe I might do that. Oh, because now you doubling down on defense length. You know what I mean? You get younger or whatever. Um, but I don't know if I would do it for. I don't know if I would trade him for OG.
Let me see if I can find this.
I mean, I only wanted to credit the writer. We don't really know, but honestly, it's a reporter out of Phoenix,
His name is Chris Davis.
Chris Davis, reporting that the Suns have interest in Carl Anthony Towns, um, and the thinking is reuniting him with Booker. They want to get off the Kevin Durant contract. Um, we talked about this for a little bit.
This is who it is right here.
Okay. Let me blow it up too so I could actually read it. All right, here we go. Can you let Jeff back in? Because I got my screen blown up. It says Chris Davis. Sources: Phoenix Suns are exploring a potential Kevin Durant trade to New York Knicks this offseason with significant interest in New York's Karl Anthony Towns. The close friendship between Devin Booker and Towns forged at Kentucky is a key factor driving Phoenix's pursuit. Let me just start by saying I love the fact that whether if there's truth to this, that it's Phoenix initiating these talks. I know a lot of Knicks fans is like still sour and mad about Durant fleecing us and not coming here in the year we got Randall. Um, I don't care about that part. What I will say is, my only concern with KD would be his injury and how long he can stay healthy. Um, I'm not concerned with age because of his type of play. And you know what I mean? Like he's not a bruiser, he's not a banger, he's a shooter. He's a pure shooter. Yeah, he's a pure scorer. And his numbers have not declined. So it is a tough uh decision if I want to do it or not. But I'm gonna give you guys the floor and we could talk about this. You know, I think it's a better fit. I think he's a better defender. Again, my only concern is two, because there are reports that he wants a 2-year 170 or 160 extension. If that's the case, I'm not doing that. But if we're talking about Kevin Durant for 2 years, at his current price, you know what I mean, I might take that risk because here's what I'm gonna say: if the Durant thing doesn't work, compared to if the Cat thing doesn't work, we get off the Durant thing sooner. If the Cat thing don't work, we're stuck with Cat for 3 more years. Um, I would hate, I would hate to not see this thing through. You know what I mean, and kind of give it another year of experience and growth and build. But
Yeah.
the Durant Cat makes more than Durant, so we would actually get another additional asset. I don't know what player that would be, but let's let's hope it's somebody that's valuable. Our depth gets stronger. I think the fit is better. He also is an off ball scorer, but he could play on ball. He could alleviate some pressure from Brunson in the backcourt and bring the ball up and kind of. I think there's a lot of positives to discuss about it. I'm not for it, but if it happens, I'm with it. I'm all for it. You know what I mean? My first thought is run it back, keep growing, keep building.
Mm-hmm.
But if we did it, I'm all in. You know what I mean? I'm not grumpy. I'm not grouchy. I think it might work. Our window becomes smaller. Our long-term window becomes smaller.
Right.
But the long-term risk also becomes smaller. Oh, I'm gonna start with Jeff. I know you've been in and out, so and you haven't spoken in a while. So Jeff, go ahead and then Sim, I gotta hear your thoughts on this.
I don't want to be in the Kevin Durant business at this stage of his career. Um, maybe I'm crazy, but I think at this age, I think Cat's a better player. I mean, I really do. I would rather have Towns. Uh, is Durant the type of player who makes the team around him better? I mean, he won a championship, yes, but he had to join Steph and Clay and Draymond and a team that was already a championship core to do it. Like he wasn't the player that really, led his team, and this is even in his prime, in my opinion, to greater heights. And for a team that doesn't have a championship identity yet, I don't know that Durant is the player that's going to give it to us. I'm not saying that Towns is either, but at his age, and then who are we going to get to play the 5 if we trade Towns? Like, is it we relying on Mitchell Robinson all year? That prospect frightens me. He's not reliable and durable. Do we bring back Precious Achua? I don't know. Like, we sign someone else at the 5. Like
Huck Party.
Is Huck Porty ready for full-time minutes at the
No, back up. Not, you know what I mean? I'm relying on Mitch. I'm trusting Mitch. Listen, I got you though. But I mean, give your grievances because I think everything you're saying is fair. And again, I'm not pushing for it. If it happens, I'm with it. But keep going, please.
I look, and it's tantalizing because of the name, and I've seen Durant do some amazing things on the court, but he's only 38?
35.
Oh, 35. He's younger than I thought. Okay, he's not as old as I thought he was.
36.
36.
So, but he'll turn 37 in September. So.
Okay, so it was 37 so he's a year younger than I thought he was. But still, 37, 38-year-old Kevin Durant, you do that, you better have that has to be the final piece to the puzzle, and you've got to be sure that you've got the group that's gonna. I mean, that to me feels like the last move in, and I'm not sure that it guarantees anything. I think it creates almost as many problems as it eliminates. Durant is a much better defender than Towns, in fairness, but Towns is fantastic on offense too, and he's a lot more likable than Durant, in my opinion. I don't know if that has anything to do.
Now, see, here's the weird thing for me.
But wait, real quick, Sim.
Okay.
When we spoke about this on the phone, do you remember what I said about Durant? And I mean, I would just say it, but just if you remember, I specifically said it's not about the name.
Right.
For me,
yeah.
It's about skill set. It's about, you know what I mean? Again, what he's still doing.
Yeah.
At his age and this stage in his career.
Yeah. See, for me, personality-wise, I don't really like either player, to be honest with you. I'm not a fan of Karl Anthony Towns at all. There's something about his personality that rubs me the wrong way. I don't know. I feel like he's whiny, kind of fake a little bit. That's just, my opinion. And KD, I feel like it's just an a-hole. Right. So personally, I don't really like either player. Now I think that, when you look at the two, Karl Anthony Towns is what, 28? KD's almost 10 years older, right? So if you're talking about, trying to build something for sustainability, if you're going to, you would probably lean in Karl Anthony Towns' direction. If you're talking about sustainability, I agree with Jeff. If you're bringing in Kevin Durant, you better make sure you got all the pieces around to make a run for the next 3 years. You know what I'm saying? Because that's about what you're pulling out of it, probably. That being said, Kevin Durant, was still giving, last year, 26.6 points a game, 52% from the field, 43% from three. Cat gave you similar numbers, right? I think the difference between the two is the way in which they score the ball, right? Kevin Durant can, really just one dribble pull up in the mid-range, come up and, knock down a three. He's, can knock down a three. Obviously, he can, I think, his ability to facilitate off the ball a little bit, not necessarily, just like really, really be a creator, but I think he can help relieve some pressure by handling that ball. Coming up the court, obviously can see over the defense a little bit. I mean, he did average 4.2 assists last year. The highest he's ever averaged was 7.4. You know what I mean? So he does, well, I don't know if that's the highest. No, 8.3 is the highest that he's ever averaged. So, he's had his time in, being able to help facilitate a little bit. I have question marks about him in the locker room, though, too. But then there's obviously question marks about Karl Anthony Towns in the locker room, but I have question marks about KD in the locker room and, his ability to mesh with players. his
Do
ability.
you do you
You know,
think it's him standoffish or do you think it's something bigger than that?
I definitely think he's kind of aloof, right? Standoffish a little bit. I think he's kind of aloof. Um, but I don't know him, so it's hard to say. But the same guy that we see like in public, like on Twitter and all that stuff, might be the same guy that's in the locker room that people don't really vibe with. You know what I'm saying? I don't think everybody vibes with Karl Anthony Towns though,
Hmm.
because I think he has that kind of you know personality. I think Karl Anthony Towns' personality is really I'm trying really hard to fit in, but it
Yeah,
just doesn't work. Well,
he
Kevin Durant,
wants to be liked
yeah,
as
but Kevin
as a
Durant is like, I don't give a damn. I don't care. You know what I'm saying? And I think it's two opposite ends of the spectrum with their personalities. So I don't know. You know what I mean? But I do feel like Kevin Durant. There's something with Kevin Durant and his ability to mesh with guys. I think in the locker room, the tangibles. Maybe it's the character, or I'm not saying he's a bad guy, but there's something I feel about him that doesn't allow those locker rooms to mesh together, right? And the only place that it's really, I guess it worked in OKC because they did go to the championship, right, one year with him. They obviously didn't win it. He was younger then. It worked in with the Warriors, but look, you had Steph and you had Clay and you had Draymond.
and it
You
worked
know
before him and it worked after him.
exactly. You know what I'm saying? They already had something in the locker room. You know what I mean? That was already strong. Obviously in Brooklyn it didn't work. Phoenix it didn't work. You know, I think it does say something about KD. You know,
And the New York media will eat him alive. Like, this isn't playing for the Nets. Like, he is not a player who takes criticism well at all. Like, he's very defensive when it comes to anybody criticizing him for any and every reason. And he's been hidden in places like Oklahoma and Phoenix and Brooklyn, and like nobody cares about the Nets. Like, it's a big market, but
right.
like there are 4 people covering the Nets. Like Ian Begley
Yeah.
had to do it so he could cover the Knicks, kind of a thing. It's not, Brooklyn is not the New York market, even if it's in the New York market.
It's not, but with him and Kyrie there, it's not Brooklyn with Bridges there. Like Bridges' experience in Brooklyn compared to his experience with New York is a lot different than Katie and Kyrie's experience in Brooklyn. Compared, you know what I'm saying?
The
Compared
shot against Milwaukee when his
Kyrie.
throw is on the line and it's a 2 instead of a 3, and so they don't win the game and they lose in overtime. Imagine if a similar scenario in the playoffs happened with the Knicks compared to what had happened in Brooklyn.
No. I'm not saying that Brooklyn and Brooklyn with KD is equal to New York. I'm just saying Brooklyn with KD is different than Bridges and KD. I mean, than Bridges in Brooklyn. That's all I'm saying. You know what I mean? Like, so it's a closer experience with him in Brooklyn to New York, to the Knicks, than it is for Bridges where he experienced and then coming to New York. I think Bridges coming to New York was a 100% wake up call. I think Durant tasted a little bit of that while he was in Brooklyn.
Yeah. It's I think with his personality, he would just be like, really, he wouldn't say it, but like F y'all. You know what I mean?
At this point in his career, he might say it.
He might, I think I would also wonder how him and Tom Thibodeau would mesh. I think Tom Thibodeau would acquiesce to KD. I don't know if Tom Thibodeau would be he's not afraid to scream at Karl Anthony Towns. He may have too much respect for KD. That being said, KD is a basketball player, though, And I think he also would do whatever the coach asked him to do, I think. Basketball wise. I think he is that kind of player because he's played so much basketball and played on uh so many teams. I don't know if I've ever heard him having an issue with a coach, but I think Tom Thibodeau will probably acquiesce to KD. Good thing or bad thing.
What do you think about KD's basketball mind or basketball IQ? And do you think he has the cachet, like I spoke about with Chris Paul, to have the coach's ear?
I don't know. I don't know if I don't think he's
Or do you even think he speaks up
yeah,
to have the coach's ear?
I don't think he speaks up that way. I don't think he does. I think he's more, you know, okay, this is what the coach is saying to do. Let's go out and try to do it. Yeah, I don't know if I don't think he speaks up that way. Like having that kind of voice.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I do believe it's a way better fit offensively. And if Mitch is healthy, we're a way better team defensively, right? If you have Brunson and then Bridges and OG, KD, and Mitchell Robinson, I think that starting five fits better. And you have a lot of length out there on the floor, to cover for Brunson. And you got two guys that can really score the basketball and give you 30 at any given night. And with Karl Anthony Towns, okay, so this is what I'll say about Karl Anthony Towns, because he can give you 30 any given night. But I said this even in the playoffs. His scoring isn't intentional sometimes, a lot of times for me. You know what I'm saying? It's almost like he takes, like, he doesn't, there'll be nights like game 3, I think it was, when he scored 20 points in the fourth quarter. He decided, I'm going to the basket every time and they're not going to stop me, right? And they couldn't stop him. You know what I mean? But there are times when he's not that intentional. It's just, okay, whatever I get is what I'm going to get. With KD, his scoring is intentional. He has his spots, and I'm going to get to my spot, and you're not going to stop me from getting to my spot, and I'm going to score at that spot. You know what I'm saying? That's the one thing about the scoring between the two. KD is just very intentional, and no one can stop him from doing it. Where I feel Karl Anthony Towns,
he settles.
He'll settle. You can, he has the talent to make things happen sometimes, but he settles. He'll fade away and only take 8 shots. You know what I'm saying? Fade out of the game and only take 8 shots. Sometimes he's not sure. To me, I think where his shot is going to come from. And so that's a little iffy for me in that regard. Like with KD, he's gonna get to that mid range, and he's a killer at that mid range. He's gonna have those walk up threes and bang. You know what I'm saying? He's gonna, and it's gonna be money every time. So I do think that lineup that I mentioned fits together better than with Karl Anthony Towns, because you can still have OG, playing in the post a little bit, to get some post play. KD can play in the post some. He's not going to bowl anybody out the way. You know what I mean? But, he's such a gifted scorer. He's going to be able to score from any area on the floor, And then it sends Josh Hart to the bench, assuming that you still, I would think you could get it done. So now, your bench, Josh Hart is automatically coming off the bench. And then if you pick up somebody like Chris Paul to come off the bench, you know what I'm saying? Your bench is now way stronger.
Got to get a 5, though, Sim.
What'd you say?
Got to get a backup 5.
Got to get it back. Got to have a backup 5.
A reliable backup, strong.
A strong, reliable one, right? Because you don't, because Mitch could go down, and you got to, and you got to have some security. I mean, KD played 62 games last year. He played 75 and 23, 24. He played 62 last year.
I think last year though, I think didn't they shut him down? Like once the season was.
Oh, I'm not sure. They may have. I don't know.
Yeah, I think last year they shut him down, or he shut whatever the case, shut him down because there was no postseason.
How did Chris Paul and they were together in Phoenix, right? Chris Paul. And
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought they were fine. I don't know. He definitely had the problems that Chris Paul has had with some of his other notable teammates.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't think Chris
Paul,
and,
you know how Chris Paul can, all the stories about Chris Paul and, and his personality.
And to me, the fact that they didn't have an issue is telling in itself, because that shows you that it's really about basketball with both of them.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. I'm gonna get out of here. I didn't expect to go this long, but I mean, this is probably a microcosm of what the off season is really gonna be, because it's gonna be so much to talk about, so many rumors popping in and popping out. I'm sure I'll miss a few of them, but I wanted to touch on or talk about the KD, the Giannis rumors as early as possible before it died down or got crazy. But I also wanted to celebrate the season, you know what I mean, first and foremost, because I feel like a lot of people are skipping that part. And this was a successful season. I think we did exceed expectations. A lot of us, it was really about getting to the Eastern Conference Finals. For a lot of us, we didn't think that was even a possibility once we knew what matchups were, what the pathway was going to be. And a lot of us underestimated Indiana, myself, what I'm talking about with that one. You know what I mean? But could we have beat them? Absolutely. You know what I mean? But they were the better team in the series, and you gotta build, and you gotta fall and get up and get back at it. Jeff, I know you're gonna be on Dope Soul.
Here in a couple minutes. They're starting at 8-ish my time, 9. Y'all.
Oh, scared me. I'm like, yo, you late, bro.
Sorry, I'm in Texas. I think it's an hour earlier for me. It's in 20 minutes or so.
20 minutes. Yep. Sim, you back tomorrow night?
Tomorrow night. Keep them or dump them.
Yeah, I know that's what they're waiting
like
for.
And subscribe, please. Tony works really hard, and so does Sim, and they do a great job. Just appreciate what you got, Knicks fans. They're two of the best in the business.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it as well. That's gonna be the next show. Towns and Bridges, and just the was one of them a better trade than the other? Were they both good? Were they both bad? We're gonna talk about that a little bit more. Appreciate you guys for jumping in. Sim, Jeff, happily ever Claflin. Please check out the blog. It's daily, and if you like him on here and Dope Soul Sports, you're gonna love him there as well. Until next time, Yo Black is time. We out of here. We play game. Appreciate y'all. Shout out to the chat, super chat.